Hello everyone, welcome to Sports Plaza. With me today I have Shubham Dhingra and Adhiraj Singh, and we're going to do a in-depth analysis of the T20 World Cup. Starting with you, Adhiraj. Australia won the T20 World Cup for the first time, a surprise winner, certainly.
Hi, Vidya. Thank you for having me on the show today. Yes, certainly. I think no one expected Australia to be the team who will be lifting up the trophy. Coming into the tournament, we saw Australia were not in great form. The team looked, in tatters, where captaincy was an issue. Their openers, Warner was not in great form, was dropped from the IPL, from the Sunrisers squad. And it's just that the whole combination was not sitting for Australia, like the dominant Australia we had seen of the past, the T20 World Cup. And the T20 team itself for Australia is very different from the ODI setup. So no one expected them to be lifting up the trophy, but what a performance by them! I mean, it all came like a puzzle. Everyone just fit in together, and very happy for them. Very happy for David Warner, especially.
Absolutely,
Pretty
I think
similar.
Warner has been an absolute legend of the game, and dropping him from Sunrisers, I think, was the wrong choice. But he showed his true class in the World Cup. Absolutely deserves it. Yeah, Shubham.
I'm saying pretty similar for me as well. I think I never expected Australia to go so far in the tournament. I thought that maybe semi-finals they can do it, but just given to their prior performances and the last five bilateral series, I had totally written them off. You know, players weren't in form, Warner wasn't in form, Steve Smith was in the squad, he barely made it to Delhi Capital side. Zampa barely played any matches in the IPL again. And like there weren't any tried and tested players on those conditions either. But I think individually, a lot of players just showed up to the occasion and brought in their A game. Beginning with David Warner, I think Sunrisers would be regretting really badly right now of how they kind of how they treated him towards the end of the IPL. He showed his true class. People said he's too old, he's out of form, he can't do it anymore. But when he started, he just turned it around. And very important innings. He's 89, and then even I think against their basically semi-final against Pakistan, when Shadab was taking wickets after wickets in semi-final, there was only one person from one end. I mean, before Wade and Stoinis actually came to the party and took the match away, it was Warner, who stuck there and played a very crucial knock up on top to keep the runs going, because he was the one who kept the run rate in check. So for me, he really, really, really stood out all in all. And for me, and a player like Warner, you can never write him off. So he was a standout performer for me, definitely. And rightly so, got the man of the series.
Absolutely. Also, Stark is the key Australian ICC T20 tournaments and ICC tournaments person. In fact, if you look at the final, he went for 60 odd runs. He's never gone for more than 50 runs in a T20 match ever. In the final, he went for 60 runs and still Australia won, which is huge. Now, we'll wait for the semi-final talk, but coming to the other finalist, New Zealand. If you see their recent ICC records, they beat India in the WTC. In the 2019 one-day final, lost in the second game over to England, and again today, New Zealand is the runners-up of the ICC T20 World Cup. So, Shubham, what is your say on New Zealand's form? Are they the best format team currently, or do you think this final loss has just stopped them?
No, for sure. They are, I think, the best team. I won't say the best team, but they are the most overperforming team across all formats, because no one really expects them to do that well. They don't have like I'm not saying these players world not saying that these players are not world class is not right, but still I won't say that they have exceptional talent as is in the overall squad, leaving out a couple of players like Williamson, of course. But Williamson, again, not a tried and tested player in the T20 format. Test matches know his caliber. But for New Zealand, it's always been about players standing up at the right time. They always hit above their weight in ICC tournaments specifically. They are always the ones who create the biggest upsets and take the match away. You know, talking about I know I'm going really back in the past, but talking about 2015 World Cup, semi-final against South Africa, they were out of the tournament. And then there came Grant Elliott, who just took the match away. Very similarly, if we talk about finals of this year's World Cup, things didn't really go in their favor in batting in the first inning. And then someone like Williamson, who I just said you wouldn't trust him in a T20 team, he comes and gives you a stellar batting performance. He was smashing left, right, and center, every bowler. So for them, it's always some or the other person who comes in and takes the entire team above the line. I think a lot of it should be given to their managerial staff and the captaincy. Williamson, definitely. Since he's taken charge, they are a team to beat in the ICC tournaments. That's my personal belief. Going back to the final a little bit, in the current T20 World Cup, one place where I think they lost out was that they scored at least 20 runs in the middle. And it has been constantly one player for Australia who I want to highlight, who, according to me, was actually the man of the series above Warner, or at least at par with him, was actually Zampa. Zampa consecutively in almost every game that he played, he choked runs in that 9 to 15 over, middle overs. It's something you would expected Indian spinners to do, in first innings. But what Zampa showed on those pitches, he was the great choker per se who just topped the runs inflow. That's my personal take. That he had a massive contribution in Australia's win this year.
I agree. I think in the middle overs, they held the key, especially with the T20 World Cup being held in UAE. And coming back to New Zealand, as you said, in 2015, it was Grant Elliott. In the 2021 semi final, it was Darren Mitchell, both unexpected wins. And Adhiraj, if you see before the T20 World Cup final, Williamson was not in great form in the IPL. And if you see in the group stages, he had not even scored a single 15, not even scoring at above 100 strike rate. But come with the occasion, come with the big man. And I think Williamson really showed that in the final. So that's it for the finalists. We know that the group toppers, which are the Super 12 toppers, they could not actually punch above their weight in the semi final, and actually both got knocked out. So England had topped the group from which was called the group of death, and Pakistan had won all their matches and topped from this group. Adiraj, what do you have to say about the semi-finalists? Starting with
Uh,
England.
Certainly, I think the best part of the T20 World Cup were the semi-final games in itself. We found two of the best matches of the tournament coming right at the the business end of the season, where England, especially England, were looking in great form. They seemed like the team to beat. Certainly, Pakistan from the other group had won all their games, but the way England was playing, the whole bench strength that England had shown, even after having not having Ben Stokes and Jofra Archer, England were the team that everyone was looking at. Josh Butler was in great form. We had Adil Rashid and Moeen Ali, just choking teams out with the runs, and Moeen Ali obviously coming to the fore with the bat as well. And England just looked like a team that was strong enough and probably go on to win the tournament. Uh, I won't say anything went wrong for England specifically.
I think two
It's
injuries did affect them. One being Jason Roy,
Absolutely.
second being Tymel Mills. Tymel Mills was their death bowler. Jordan did not rise to the party. And losing Jason Roy and the semi final, you saw Bairstow struggle when he was opening. So I think these two injuries were a concern, but still a very, very impressive squad they had.
Certainly, even after the injury, we know that Bairstow has opened for them, has opened in the IPL as well. So it wasn't that they were losing out. Obviously, Jason Roy was in great form as an opener and has done that for them over a period of time. But again, it was a game that England it could have been a game that England would have won the semi-final specifically. And it was just that, like you said, Tymel Mills specifically, I think that death over specialist that they were missing, that's where they struggled a little bit. But even after, I mean, it just shows you that even after without Ben Stokes and a Jofra Archer, which is their two key players in the squad, England looked like the team to beat. So certainly for the years to come, I think Owen Morgan as a captain has done really well for this team. Certainly there were questions about his captaincy itself because he has not been amongst the runs for England. Comes down to bat lower down the order. But something about him as a captain, I think we saw it with KKR, got them to the finals. And again, in the tournament, in the group stages, certainly England looked like the team, as if he knows what is the best combination and One person I would really want to point out towards, and I'm looking forward to one player is Liam Livingston. No one expected him to turn up as a great leg spinner for England. We all know his batting capabilities. He's shown it before. But to come into this bigger tournament and bowl 4 overs consecutively, pressure overs, taking wickets as well. And I mean, what a revelation he has been for England. And for years to come, I think my pick for England for this World Cup was Liam Livingston.
One thing
Very
that each and every squad can take away from England has actually been the man management, or the player management across different formats. There was a lot of criticism in the middle where players said that, why are you, constantly dropping your best players out of the squad, saying that you need to give them enough rest. When you need the players, you need the players. And, the constant rotation policy that the England board follows, it was criticized, definitely. But looking at how the players performed when the time was right is something that should definitely be considered by other teams, and I would say India specifically, because we as a nation have constantly been reliant on a selected 11 players, and majority of them play most of the formats. And given the amount of time they spent in the bio bubble, which led to fatigue, which was also said to be one of the key reasons why we didn't do as well as a nation. So, big lesson from England to learn, because I think they did really well given the amount of injuries they had. Otherwise, had those four been in the squad, I don't think there was any stopping for them from winning this World Cup.
but you're right, but there's a lot of controversy in that, not getting into the workload and management part right now. But as Adhiraj said, I think their squad balance, which held the key, and both the semi-finalists were, according to me, the best matches as well. I think in both the matches, you needed 60 odd runs to win in 5 overs, team winning it in 4 overs, and both of them had 5 wickets down. So I think both the semi-finalists did amazingly well. Now, Hira, uh, on to the second semi-finalist, Pakistan. How good they were. I know they beat India, so I don't want you to take that into consideration. But how was their World Cup so far?
Look, gonna take two steps back. Pakistan, for me, was one of the least prepared teams coming into this competition because they had England cancelling on them, they had New Zealand cancelling on them. They barely had any international experience before they stepped into the T20 World Cup. They were majorly reliant on their domestic circuit, they were reliant on PSL. They picked up players according to the performances in domestic league without any international exposure. Okay. At the same time, it's fair to say that most of the cricket that Pakistan plays is actually in UAE, which may have added to their benefit. But when you don't have international practice, it still has a big weight on your experience and your players, individual players' experience. Keeping in mind all of them, I think they did really well. They stood up to my expectation because they were specific players from whom everyone and all around the world had expectations. Players like Babar Azam, Rizwan, Shaheen Afridi, their leggy, Shadab Khan, all of these players did exceptionally well in the domestic circuit. There was a lot of talk about how all of these players are going to fail because they only perform in Pakistan, don't do that well at a bigger level. Their own ex players, I won't take names here, criticize that these guys are not big game players. Fine, they didn't win the tournament, but I think they took away all those tags because they really stood up to the kind of expectations the nation had from them, and they did well. I'm not going to have a personal bias because they beat us. They were really good as a team, and credit where it's due.
I think Dingra,
Absolutely. I
just
think
want to.
Pakistan, for me, were performing better than England. That's my choice. And not
Yeah,
just the four names that you mentioned, I would also like to credit the middle order and
yeah,
finishers, which are Asif Ali and Shoaib Malik. Both won
definitely.
matches, and Asif Ali is one of the best hitters. They didn't have Azam Khan in the squad, who's an amazing hitter against spin bowling and is very young. But Asif Ali, in a matter of 10 balls, had hit 6 sixes, something that you probably expect an Indian Hardik Pandya to do. I think Asif Ali was successfully doing it for Pakistan. And not like Shoaib Malik, he's 39 years old, was not a part of the original squad, got added later, and did win them a game as well. So I would say they had a very balanced squad, and Imad Wasim and Shadab Khan's performance goes under the radar. But I think Imad Wasim bowled absolutely brilliant in the power plays. He bowled across all power plays and had an economy of less than six. Not amongst the wickets, may not even have completed his quota of 4 overs each match, but splendid economy, choking in the power play. So I think Pakistan was the team to beat. They beat their two main rivals, which are India and New Zealand, because New Zealand cancelled on them. So I think these two wins in the Super 12 must have given their fans a lot of hope and a lot of pride. And I did not expect Pakistan to lose that semi-final match. And
Yeah,
Shaheen Shah ready to go for three sixes in a row. That was absolutely madness by Wade, and hard luck Pakistan on that. But I think a very, very well deserved campaign, a young team, and something that they'll really cherish on a lot of ICC tournaments coming up. Yes, Adira.
Yeah, just one more thing. I think, like Shubham had mentioned, Pakistan didn't seem prepared for the tournament. I think the point that Hayden came in as a last-minute replacement, they didn't have a coach to get into this tournament. I think a big point was how he just had maybe a few months or a few weeks to prepare Pakistan, at least the way he wanted them to prepare. And the good thing
And
that
he
we
didn't
saw
even
with
select the team or the squad that he wanted. Squad was already selected.
exactly,
Misbah stepped
exactly.
down. So a lot of controversy around that manner. Very good point.
Correct. Correct. Like the fact that Hayden came in, and what I like Vidit, you had mentioned the fact that they had the combination of youth with the with the experienced players. The
Yes,
point
players.
that they had a Hafiz and a Shoaib Malik who are nearing their 40s now roughly, and have been playing cricket for Pakistan for the past 2 decades roughly. The fact that those two contributed, like I was not expecting, that these two to come down at 4 and 5 and give the runs, score quickly. Hafiz was phenomenal in a few run chases as well. Uh, so I think the fact that we knew Rizwan, Babar Azam will do well. First, Fakar Zaman will coming at one down will do well. But the issue that was that middle order where Shoaib Malik plugged in and Hafiz plugged in completely well. But Hafiz can you give you a few overs as well. So I mean, a very good team. Pakistan is looking like a very strong team in the coming up tournaments. And if this continues, I think Hayden has a good squad in his hand. Within Hayden, they have a good coach as well. He's obviously relatively new to the coaching area, but I think Pakistan is one of the teams to look out for in the coming tournaments.
And right now, even as we talk, Pakistan has beaten Bangladesh in their home turf 2-0 in the T20s. And if you see Bangladesh T20s are finalists, Australia lost, New Zealand lost. So the template ideally to win or become a finalist in a T20 tournament is go to Bangladesh and lose. Pakistan has actually overcome. So now we've spoken about the top four. Coming to the Super 12 groups, I'll just show you very quickly. This is Group 1, in which England won four matches. They lost their last match to South Africa. It's the first time that's happened that South Africa won four matches and still could not qualify. West Indies had a poor season. Bangladesh could not win any match. And the other group, the first group was called the group of death, but this only had top three teams and Afghanistan. But I'd say when you have lower order teams, it becomes all the more tough because if you lose one match to Pakistan and New Zealand, any other match you lose, you cannot qualify. In that, you may lose to two teams, but you expect, let's say, a Sri Lanka or a Bangladesh to win. I think India beat the 4th, 5th, 6th team very convincingly. There were a lot of hope on Afghanistan New Zealand match, but rightly deservedly, New Zealand qualified along with Pakistan. So Shubham, what exactly went wrong for India?
So, honestly, before we even, start talking about India at ICC, there's one thing that I had been saying from the beginning of the World Cup, and I still, I'm of the same faith that this World Cup was all about the toss. You win the toss, you win the match. This World Cup and most of its matches as well, especially when there were matches between two closely contested sides, every team who got their preferred batting preference, like when they chose to bat second or when they won the toss, they went on to win the match. Exactly. England and Pakistan lost all the more crucial tosses in semi-finals. Both of them went on to lose the game. India in the first two games against New Zealand and Pakistan went on to lose the toss, went on to lose the game itself. So it was highly dependent on the toss. I'm not taking that away. But at the same time, as a batting unit, in the first two games, we didn't turn up. That is my personal opinion of what happened in this World Cup. I don't know whether it was a lack whether it was like some overconfidence coming in from the IPL that we know the conditions, we can do well, whether it was the fact that there was bubble fatigue, um, too much cricket played by the same individuals, or whether it was the overall top four confusion that who to open with, who to send one down, who to send two down. A lot of factors, a lot of confusion that just combine into drastic two performances. And like you said, in group where you have only three strong teams and three relatively weaker teams, even losing one match can create a lot of pressure, which has an overall negative performance on the team's morale and the performance. And which is what happened with us after we lost that one game by 10 wickets. The start, and I think that was the beginning of the end for us. And then in tournaments like these, you can't rely on other teams' performances to take you through. Deservedly so, we crashed out in the Super 12, is my personal take.
So, Adhiraj, I'll stick with you for the Indian question. And coming to the bowlers, more importantly, first the spinners, be it Jadeja, be it Varun Chakravarti, or Rahul Chahar, Ashwin, and about Mohammad Shami's form. I think the only bowler who had turned up in the World Cup was Bumrah. And Mohammad Shami, I know there's a lot of unnecessary criticism and hatred towards him after the India Pakistan match, but his form in T20 nationals has not been up to the mark. Second, our mystery spinner, on which there was a lot of reliance. He performed brilliantly in the UAE in the second stage of IPL. Varun Chakravarti did not perform, and Jadeja's bowling is never to be trusted as a fifth bowler. I say you need a sixth bowling option always. Hardik Pandya did bowl a few overs here and there, but his bowling form, was he fit, not fit? There was a lot of controversy. I'll not get into Hardik Pandya right now. But what about a bowling lineup?
Uh, so Will, I think to one point that Shubham had mentioned, I don't, I think the batting lineup, like you had said, was I think probably the strongest that India went with. No criticism there. We lost the games because the batting didn't click. Probably a very good bowling unit that we came across in against Pakistan and against New Zealand. But coming to the bowling, a few areas where I was a little bit confused. The point of taking Ashwin with the squad to for the World Cup and not selecting him against the in the bigger games where you would want the experience of a Ravichandra Ashwin. And secondly, what we've seen across this tournament were the leg spinners were the key bowlers for each team. We saw Wahindu Hasaranga, who was like or let's say a mystery spinner for Sri Lanka. We saw Liam Livingston bowling leg spin, who was very good. Zampa bowling very well leg spin. Similarly, Ish Sodhi for New Zealand. So the fact that you did take Rahul Chahar, but again he did not get the games, and the bigger issue that we saw with Yuzvendra Chahal, who is the most experienced leg spinner who we had in the squad, he was not selected for the tournament. I agree, maybe his performances in the IPL or prior to that was not good, but the selection of the spinners is where I felt was an issue. If you're taking Ashwin, then you play Ashwin in the more important games, and he has shown it in the games he got to play after that, and in the current series as well. So I think the issue was with the selection. We saw Varun Chakravarti had a lot of hopes. Obviously, he's new to the international circuit. You can't pin him down and expect him to deliver in each game. Obviously, he was very good in the IPL, but for me, it was selecting probably Ashwin ahead of a Yuzvendra, of Varun Chakravarti maybe. And then if you had the option of having a proper leg spinner, then why not go? We know leg spinners are wicket takers. Maybe Rahul Chahar getting a game. Not criticizing any bowler per se, but I think this team selection, specifically for the bowling, is where India kind of lost the first two games, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was a bit of a concern for me as well because I mean, I don't know whether it was selection or maybe, bowling in the second innings in UAE. Dew had increased coming into later October. They couldn't grip the ball well. Multiple reasons. So I do blame the pitches. But then again, like a lot of people have said, it's not that it's new for these players. Like Dew is not a new concept. It's been there for a while and you have to strategize accordingly and give your bowlers those extra runs. So bowling for me wasn't personally a bigger concern. It was as simple as our batters didn't show up in the first two games. And I think that's where we have lost a multiple times in the past, be it your World Test Championship final or be it the World Cup 2019 semi-final against New Zealand. You don't have enough runs on the board. You can't expect your bowlers to do some magic. It's as straightforward as that.
Okay, point taken. And to the point of what you said about win the toss, win the match, I think an interesting fact supporting this would be in the last few matches in UAE, only one team which actually batted first and won the match was CSK and not in the
It's
T20 World
actually
Cup. And also when it comes to Australia, Australia is the only team which has actually won an ICC tournament and they've never won any match batting first. They lost one match. Finch actually won 6 out of 7 tosses, which is a
exactly.
very record. But I would still say India did not lose the first 2 matches only because of toss. They lost 3 wickets in the power play, scoring 30 odd runs. Then you have to probably build on and you cannot score as freely. And in Dubai, even in the IPL, you saw that you need to go hard on the power play. After that, it's tough to score runs. But if you
And
lose
whereas I would,
3 wickets
I'm
starting
sorry, I'm
on,
cutting you, but I would correct you. So it's not actually UAE, it's actually in Dubai, where entire 2021, there's been only one team that's won a game batting first, which was the final of 2021 IPL that CSK won. No other team in Dubai has been able to defend a score.
okay. And also, if it comes to the semi final, as per me, till the 15th over of the second innings, it was always the team batting first was on top, was favorable. They did not win. But I would not just blame the toss, open handedly win the toss, win the match. Obviously, it had a huge role to play and something which the ICC needs to look on. Coming to some of the other Super 12 knockouts, number one being South Africa. So, South Africa could not make it to the semi-finals. First team to win 4 out of 5 matches and still get crashed out. Adiraj, do you think it was all due to NRR or their first game against Australia was the key?
Uh, Certainly, with I think they were a slow start for South Africa. Uh, the batsmen just didn't turn up in the first game, let's say that, and they did not put enough runs on the board. They still made the game out of it. I think South Africa as a bowling unit did perform well.
Really well.
With the likes of Kagiso Rabada and Nokia playing a lot of IPL specifically in India and in Dubai. I think these two have been the key for them in the T20 World Cup. And yes, like you mentioned, the first game against Australia, where in a group of death, basically you have to win every game if you want to be one of the two teams that you have to qualify. And not having and knowing that the net run rate will come into four, that was always going to be a criteria. So honestly, I did not have a lot of expectations out of South Africa. They had the captaincy change. They don't have Duplessis in the squad. They don't have an AB de Villiers in the squad. Obviously, they've kind of retired from the format. But I'm still did not have a lot of expectations out of South Africa, but was very happy to see the way they perform. And Nintendo Buama has been a very good captain for them. He kind of holds the nerve for the team. Players play around him, they bat around him. And the likes of Quinton de Kock and specifically Markram, I think this is a good side that we're going to see. I think it's a build-up time for South Africa again. They're trying to get back to their feet as one of the teams that they were at the past. We did see, the likes of Miller coming in and showing what they are capable of in a few games. But very happy with the way South Africa played. A very good opponents, in the matches they won. But they will be gutted to not qualify on net run rate for sure.
Just to add on,
And
and I think
one
where
key player
also
that was left on is Rassie van der Dusen. I think he single-handedly stabilized the middle order, sometimes 10 to 1 down. Won them the last match against England as well. That is level best. And along with the paces, I feel Markram and Van der Dusen will have a key role in IPL and in other tournaments as well. There was a controversy with Decock taking the knee, not taking the knee. But I think South Africa certainly, no one expected them to be in the top three in this group. But I think they performed exceptionally well, did really well to win 4 out of 5 matches. Another team which probably just won 1 out of the 5 matches was West Indies. And it is surely the end of the West Indies great T20 era that we have seen, be it Bravo retiring, Gale has still not retired. But Shubham, what do you feel about this West Indies team? On paper, I know how they performed. They won only one match. But what do you feel of this team?
got it. Before I step into West Indies, one more thing that I want to point out regarding South Africa. I think another place where they kind of lost, where they couldn't make it in terms of NRR was actually against Bangladesh. They had to chase
I
90
think
odd
it's
runs.
very easy to say in hindsight they did not they scored for 80 odd runs in 14 overs, but they lost three
Exactly.
wickets in the power play. And Mark Boucher
Exactly.
has said this very clearly that we did want to go hard, but after losing wickets, we first wanted those 2 points and then focus on NRR. But point taken, it's very easy to say in
Yeah, I
hindsight,
mean,
I feel.
I
Yeah.
understand, but like the thing is, that was another place which kind of did affect their overall chances of going ahead. Because in a tournament like that, where you have when you're in a group with such tight teams and in the so-called group of death, you need to keep these things in mind.
And
It
I
didn't
think
go as
Australia in the
planned.
last two matches, be it against West Indies and against Bangladesh, won by a huge, huge margin to actually
Yeah,
bolster the NRR, which I think
exactly.
never I wouldn't have expected. Australia scored 80 odd runs in 6 overs against Bangladesh,
Yeah.
beat West Indies in 16 overs, scored 160. So I think that also lifted Australia's NRR. And the point that you said, South Africa could not score heavily. Coming to West Indies now.
See, West Indies for me has always been a team that is like hit out or get out. They've always like kind of relied and played the T20 cricket around this psychology only. Although I understand that most of their bigger players, bigger names, legends are kind of like stepping out, but the way the cricket is played, if you even look at CPL, they have a great pool of talent, a lot of players who are strong, big hitters. So, all in all, the trend would remain the same. I just feel that now they're in that transition phase where the new talent is yet to mature and cement their place. Players like Hetmeyer, Puran, Azari Joseph, Jason Holder. I know Jason Holder is slightly like older player, now been playing for a while, but these players will now take the reins and will keep on playing a similar attractive version of the cricket that they play. And I expect them to continue being the same West Indies that they have been all this while. So yeah, with them it's always a hit out or get out kind of a scenario. They are like one of those really risky bonds that I don't think I'd personally ever put my money on, because who knows what West Indies may turn up, on a particular day. That's my take for them.
Well, it's a T20 format, and there's been a lot of analysis done where is hitting sixes to dot ball percentage is always the highest for the West Indies team, and second highest is actually Afghanistan, which also follows a very similar template. They have lots of dot balls, but when they score, they try to hit lots of boundaries. West Indies hits a lot of sixes, Afghanistan hits a lot of boundaries, and this has proven them in the past. Did not click in this World Cup. But Adhiraj, do you think end of a great era for the West Indies team?
Yeah, certainly. I think no one can deny the fact that Bravo, the likes of Bravo and Chris Gale, have made T20 the game that we love today. I think the kind of camaraderie, the kind of game that they brought into to the world, the feel good factor, or just playing their heart out, the way they played, the way they performed. They were like performers on stage, specifically Bravo and Chris Gale. The two giants, two greats of the T20 era, and they will be missed by West Indies, surely. I mean, we all know Gale has not been at his best. I mean, he's not at his peak, certainly. And same goes for Bravo. But both of them had played for their T20, IPL T20 sides, and they've done well for them. But I think West Indies as a team will certainly be missing the experience of these two players a lot. They have a Pollard maybe for another few years, or a Jason Holder that will be there. But I think two greats retiring from the T20 area will be Dwayne Bravo and certainly Chris Gale, who will not be playing the next ICC tournament for West Indies, I feel.
And both these cricketers have taken the T20 specifically as a format globally, playing in leagues across the world and done amazingly well in each of these leagues. So they'll certainly be missed by all fans. Now, just to close on a very happy note, we had some of the associate nations also participating with the likes of Namibia, Ireland, Netherlands in one group, and Scotland, Oman, and PNG. The two teams that qualified were Namibia and Scotland, along with Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. And Shubham, what were the top two teams to look out for? I think for the associate nations, just playing with the bigger teams, getting to play 5 matches with them was a huge experience plus point for them. Probably in the Super 12, they did not click or actually perform up to their potential, but I think these were platforms or opportunities you really need. And after these matches, you saw Indian team players, Pakistan team players actually going and interacting with all these players. So that was a huge plus point, huge motivation for all these associate teams. What do you feel about that?
I feel very similar to what you're saying, because for them, and usually they're playing in their own conference of sorts where they play associate nations regularly over the calendar year, you know. But these ICC tournaments give them a platform to actually interact, get exposure to play with the stronger cricketing nations in the world, take a lot of input, a lot of knowledge from very experienced squads, coaches, management, which helps them overall as a nation. Personally, for me, Namibia really stood out. I think all of them, somewhere or the other, had their moments where they could have toppled a biggest side or two. Scotland was on the verge of defeating New Zealand. Namibia played some fantastic matches. You know, David Visa and JJ Smith, I believe, for Namibia really stood out. Then I'm forgetting the player's name in Ireland. He ended up taking 4 wickets in an over,
Curtis
and
Camphor.
exactly, Curtis Camphor. And that earned him a place in the T10 league that's happening in Dubai right now. It's a different thing that he was smacked for like 40 runs in 2 overs in the last game. But irrespective, a lot of talent is recognized. You get to know about a lot of players that get to play in a lot of leagues. And it's just better and it's great for the cricket overall, is what I feel.
Absolutely, I feel the same, and it would be great to actually see some of the players. So, spinner from Scotland, Mark Watt, he had an amazing economy, less than six. And if you see some of these names, probably even as net bowlers in the IPL, if not as a part of the playing 11, that'll be a huge plus point for these nations. A lot of development in these infrastructure. But Adiraj, do you expect more bilateral series to happen, not just among associate nations, them playing qualifiers or in their own conference, but actually with bigger teams? I think that holds the key for the improvement.
Yeah, I think, like you guys have mentioned, it's really great for these teams, the associate nations, to come and come on a big stage where, specifically this kind of format where they get to play 5 games against the other sides, which kind of helps them. It's not a knockout where you have to play, let's say, 2 or 3 games. They're getting that opportunity to get more than 4 or 5 games in the tournament. I think, like you mentioned, with it, it's important that for the game itself and for these playing nations, that they get to play the bilateral series as well. Maybe it could be just be a 2 game series, but the fact that going international, playing on foreign soils, playing in those conditions, I think that's going to be very helpful for these teams. And just a point that we have seen Afghanistan grow as a nation in cricket. They were associate nation. They did not get to play a lot of cricket, but we can see the kind of talent that is coming out of Afghanistan. We have Rashid Khan, we have Mujib, who are players who have shown at international level now how capable they are. And Afghanistan itself as a team is kind of showing that in the group that they were in, people were expecting them to beat in New Zealand or in India. It was never like they are an associate nation anymore. They have come from that tag but moved away, and kind of showing and becoming that international side that they are. So I think it's important for these teams like Namibia, Scotland. We know Ireland have done it before in the World Cup previously. They beat England. So the fact that they should get to play these bilateral series with the other top nations. They could be, probably with India A or a South Africa A. Could be with the second string teams of the top of these countries or of these nations, since they have much bigger pool of players. But certainly, a bilateral series will definitely be helping them. And just not participating in the tournament, just directly coming into the World Cup, it's going to be much better for them if they play these bilateral series and then come into the tournament as with some kind of experience with these players.
Very rightly said. And there have been some nations such as Kenya, Zimbabwe, who have shown previously, but be it due to the management issues, corruption issues, board issues, or probably not enough matches, not funds, have lost out on cricket talent, which was great. They have performed. And I hope all these associate nations actually get the due platform which is needed. On that note, thank you everyone. Thank you for watching. Thank you to all our subscribers. Do like, subscribe, and comment. Let us know what were your favorite moments and memories for this World Cup. I know India did not have a great season, but I think the top four were truly deserving teams, deserved to be there and played the best cricket that was possible. Waiting for the next World Cup. And with this, thank you everyone. Thank you so much.